Okay, so thank you all for being here today. As Sarah mentioned, this past summer I completed a co-op placement at the University of Ottawa Management Library, and one of the projects that I undertook there was an assessment project looking at the use of their online research guides. And the purpose of that work was to take a more evidence-based approach to their future development and maintenance. And so I'd like to present some preliminary results to you today. So the University of Ottawa Management Library is a satellite branch under the umbrella of the main University of Ottawa Library Network. And they're actually embedded within the Telfer School of Management. So they have a very close working relationship to the faculty and over 4,500 students who study there. The library itself is quite small. There are only 2 librarians who work out of the library. Within the library, they only have a small collection of reference and reserve print collection, which really reflects the type of reference work that they do, which primarily involves connecting users to electronic resources. And this work is greatly enabled through the development of their online research guides. So they create their research guides using the Springshare LibGuide platform, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And so they're responsible for developing and maintaining 23 guides, which have over 400 pages of content connecting users to content or to resources in business, management, and finance. And all of their LibGuides are presented in both official languages, so in English and French. Like other research guides at the University of Ottawa Library, they're required to follow guidelines in their design and accessibility. However, there are comparatively few guidelines for their development and maintenance, besides a requirement for some routine link checking. And so in my own work with these research guides, I've found that the relationship between their development and maintenance is a bit of a catch-22 scenario. The more time and effort that's put into the development of these research guides, the better they become. But then the more time and effort must also be dedicated to their assessment and maintenance. And so as many librarians can and have attested to, developing and maintaining research guides is a very time-consuming process. And so the librarians at the management library found themselves in a situation that I'm sure many other librarians find themselves in, which is stretched between far too many guides, lacking the time and resources to develop and maintain them. And so that situation drove us to questioning whether we could be a little more strategic in this work and whether we could find ways of maximizing the impact of our effort with our research guides. So with that in mind, we decided to quantitatively examine the use of their research guides in order to inform some future development and maintenance guidelines. And so more specifically, my own work was aimed at uncovering what content was being most accessed or underutilized on these guides, and then what factors might explain that variation. So to answer those questions, I extracted data from the Springshare LibGuides platform and from the Google Analytics platform, which is also installed on the library's server. And I extracted usage data corresponding to the dates of May 2015 to April 2016, so a full calendar year. And so the 2 variables I used to describe usage were page view counts and then an estimate of the average amount of time users were spending on these guide pages. And so with those 2 usage variables defined, I was then able to relate them to a series of factors that I thought might explain variation in use. And the results I'd like to present to you today include time of year, guide subject, page content, the language of the guide, and then related courses. So I'm going to try to see if this laser pointer works. No, okay. Go close, it's fine. I can just point with my hand and voice. So if we look at how usage varies across a full calendar year, on the left we have usage defined in terms of annual view counts, and hopefully that text isn't too small. So we can see that 50% of all views for the entire year are gained in just 3 months, so between September and November. And then when we add in February and March, we find that 3/4 of all views are gained in just 5 months, which has obvious implications for when content needs to be updated. However, we find that when usage is defined as time spent on pages, we don't really see the same amount of variation throughout the year, which to my mind might suggest that how users are using these guides doesn't vary greatly throughout the year, simply the number of users actually on the guides. Next, when we look at how usage varies across all the 23 guides, And on the left, in the blue, we have usage defined as total view counts, and in the yellow, we have usage defined as time on the pages. And we find poor correspondence between our usage variables, which suggests that they're controlled by different factors. What's really interesting, though, is we find large disparity in view count, with more than 50% of all views being gained just by the 5 most popular guides. Next, we decided to categorize pages according to their page type and look at how usage varied that way. Again, in the blue, we have usage defined as view counts, and yellow as time on pages. And we can see, again, wide disparity in use by page type. If you look at the blue chart, we can see that home pages really do serve as a kind of a landing site, and so they gain the most traffic. But encouragingly, users spend more time on pages devoted to more substantial content, like course pages, citation guides, and article searching. Next, when we look at how use of these guides varies according to language, we can see that English language guides, so we're on the blue section of the figure, receive significantly greater view counts. And then if you look at the yellow side, also more time spent per page on average compared to their French language counterparts. And so this raises an important question. Is this simply a function of demographics, or is there a systemic problem with the quality of the French language guides? At the Telfer School of Management, there are far fewer French language students, so to me it makes sense that their French language guides would receive fewer views. That doesn't really explain why students are spending less time on those pages, though, which warrants further investigation. And lastly, we mapped all of the undergraduate courses at Telfer to their most related research guide and looked at how usage varied according to course count. And so if you look at the top left portion of the figure, we find a medium strength correlation between a guide's view count and the number of related courses, which is intuitive. The more courses that are related to a guide, the more views it receives. However, we don't find that same relationship when usage is defined as time spent on guides. So that's the bottom left portion of the figure. What's really interesting, though, is that when we then separate research guides according to whether some of their courses received in-class visits by a librarian that year, we find that those research guides with courses that did receive visits have significantly more views, and students are spending more time on those pages compared to guides without related courses that received visits. So some simple insights for the management librarians gained thus far. Their guide content should be current as of and frequently updated during the months of September through November and February through March. For greater visibility, important information should be placed on their homepages. And what I consider the main take-home message, guide content should be linked as much as possible to courses in order to increase usage, whether by creating specific course pages or promoting relevant guides during in-class visits. If you recall back a few slides where I showed that the 5 most popular guides received 50% of all views for the year, all of those guides had specific course pages on their sites, one or more. So that really reinforces this finding. And so some next steps are considering developing a maintenance schedule in order to prioritize the most used guides in order to maximize impact of their work, to review underused guides and apply lessons learned in order to promote their content, and as I mentioned earlier, further investigate the lower usage of those French language guides. And so I'd like to thank Cecilia Tellis and Liz Hayden from the University of Ottawa for their assistance with this work, and thank you all for your attention.